What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that I think that's been pretty anticipated amongst its fans since it's been 3 years since the last one. And, I mean, in terms of, like, melodic deathdoom, I think this is kind of like one of the Mount Rushmore bands. We are going to go over the latest offering from Swallow the Sun, Shining. This also comes out on the 18th of October on Century Media Records. This band formed in 2000 in Finland. This is their 9th album overall. I got into them with their album Emerald Forest and The Blackbird. It really didn't make a big impression on me initially. And then I saw them live. I was like, oh my God, this band is absolutely amazing and really sad. Then I ended up kind of getting back on board. I got their last two, When a Shadow is Forced in the Light, which is unbelievably sad, especially when you know the context of it. And their last album, Moonflowers, which I think is honestly one of their strongest. So naturally, I was pretty excited for this band. As I would say, like, if they had come out in the 90s and were on Peaceville Records, it would probably be the Peaceville 5 we were talking about, unless we're, like, omitting that band and Catatonia, too.
Right.
Whatever.
I got into these guys in 2006 with their album Hope, and it was really before I was into music like this, and so it didn't really sit, I think, correctly with me. But I have jammed that album, and I've jammed a couple of other songs here and there from these guys, and I like them, so I knew that going into this, I was going to like this as well.
And we did like this. But this album, I would say, is very different than at least all the albums that I have listened to by this band. Generally, when I think of Swallow the Sun, I think of bleak melodies, downtrodden, doomy guitars, harsh and clean vocals that sound woeful and tortured. And of course, bands like My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, and, you know, like Catatonia, especially like earlier Catatonia. This album sounds a lot different, and I'll even say like the first 4 tracks on here really kind of threw me for a loop. At least 3 out of these first 4 tracks did.
Because the first 4 tracks on this album sound like Catatonia, but newer Catatonia. I'll be damned if it wasn't bright and big and beautiful and soaring choruses and melodies and just what the hell.
Yeah, I was not really prepared for that. The opening track, Innocence Was Long Forgotten, almost kind of just like the antithesis of the opening track on Moonflowers, which Moonflowers comes in heavy, oppressive. You still get clean vocals, but you get these giant, heavy sections, like massively heavy. This song is, I would say, predominantly clean vocals, and honestly, I would say this album is predominantly clean vocals, and like the tone of this album in general is just very different. Now, I get that the album is called Shining, and I mean, I suppose to anticipate something brighter might not have been completely out of line, but again, this is still Swallow the Sun, which, I don't know, this album, I feel like the sun is very much out, very much just shining down on a band that is smiling a whole hell of a lot more than I'm comfortable with. A good chunk of these songs are built on, like, big soaring rock hooks. Even the production on here is notably different. Like, this definitely has a more polished, modern production. It's still very lush and very layered and dense and, you know, all the things that they're definitely known for, but it's done in such a completely different gear where, again, like, it's very soaring. It's just notably different. Like, these songs feel like they are, I mean, honestly, trying to make the chorus hooks shine. And, I mean, to their credit, they do. They are, you know, kind of like sing-alongs. Like, they have, like, big vocal hooks. The melodies stick in your head, but it is so not what I expected.
And me too. I went into this thinking, you know, downtrodden and sad, and I was like, all right, I'm ready for more tears. We just did Mother of Graves, and I was like, man, I'm ready for round 2, and I got a little stony baloney, and I was waiting, and I found myself singing along to, I'd say, 80% of the choruses in this record, which I didn't expect to do, because they're bright and soaring, and you've got these big, like, crooning vocals, and it's impossible not to sing to them.
A lot of this kind of reminded me of, again, like when Catatonia started making their shift. Granted, their shift was a little bit more gradual. Like, there was definitely, like, kind of a gray period, like, Tonight's Decision and such. Like, we're still kind of figuring out this new direction. And then by the time you get down to, like, Viva Emptiness and The Great Cold Distance, like, okay, this is our new sound. And, well, I would imagine that was even kind of divisive with fans, but I think most people have kind of grown to really just like what Catatonia does now. On the other side of that, this also kind of reminds me of when Paradise Lost made the big shift on Host, which Host is drastically different than any of their earlier stuff, which I got in that band with Draconian Times, and that's just like kind of a gothic death doom masterpiece in my mind. This feels more geared towards, I wouldn't say like pop, but it's more about like rock hooks for the most part. And I had to put this in perspective as to like, all right, when people get into these bands, like I got into Catatonia on The Great Cold Distance, and then it took a while for me to actually get used to their earlier stuff, which I really like their earlier stuff too. I got into Paradise Lost again with Draconian Time, so I was used to the heavier material. And then when I heard Host, initially it was like, oh man, did I accidentally pick up a Stabbing Westward album? Not the worst, but it wasn't what I expected. But at the same time, it was executed pretty well.
So it all depends on where you get into the band at. And like this one, I could see people getting into this and being like, this is a nice rock album.
Yeah. Now, that isn't to say that this is completely bereft of, the material that Swallow the Sun is really known for. They're, very, melodic, but again, very downtrodden death doom that they do. Songs like What I Have Become, Cold, and Charcoal Sky definitely have their heavier moments. You start hearing a lot more of the harsh vocals, which Mikko's vocals are fantastic. That dude has an amazing range, both in the clean spectrum and the harsh spectrum. And I like hearing his growls kind of play off of his cleans more. So I did like those tracks. That, and they are notably heavier. Like the riffs really kind of just come out as more aggressive, more doom-laden. Because a lot of these riffs in here are, again, like very melodic. They complement the lush synths very well. And again, they build into these very grand, hooky choruses. That isn't to say these heavier tracks don't have their cleaner moments, but it's done like more in the way that you would expect from this band if you haven't listened to this album first. Charcoal Sky in particular, that song is probably one of the heavier tracks on here. It really kind of storms in like an Opeth song. Like I was instantly reminded of like Baying of the Hounds. Like it's just got that good kind of driving rhythm, really hefty riffs to it, like some cool syncopation. And it stays heavy right pretty much through this like big lead in. Like there's a great setup to it. Big, robust growls. Like, again, Mikko's vocals in here are fantastic. And it has this big dropout to this clean chorus, which is really catchy. It's a really sharp drop-off to this chorus. Like, everything cuts out and becomes very quiet, muted, and he has these very breathy vocals, but it really works on that song.
And then you have the track Cold with a K, which is kind of the same way. It, again, stays heavy, and it is notably darker. In fact, probably one of the darkest tracks on here. This was the first time, and really the only time, where I got the vibe that said, this is kind of doomy. This is kind of dark. I feel kind of sad. It might be raining here. It might be full-blown rain. I don't even think there's a rainbow. It's got kind of a creepy melody to it. It's just kind of haunting throughout. And although there is another part where it gets to a big, like, clean moment, it does stay predominantly heavy.
And to its credit, this being, like, predominantly more melodic and more focused on clean vocals, it does do it well. It may not necessarily always be my style, but I think it is executed rather well. November Dust, which I think is what happens when you don't get enough November rain. I know, that's a bad one. That song, honestly, it feels like an homage to Typo Negative. Like
100%.
The vocal dynamics, Mikko apparently can do both like a Pete and a Kenny sort of vocal style. It works beautifully with the lush, very chimey guitars and synths on there. It's very gothic and doomy. It's absolutely wonderful. Like if you love Typo Negative, like I love Typo Negative,
right,
then yeah, I'm reasonably sure you would probably really dig this track.
It's so actually spot on that it's kind of haunting, because really, if you hadn't told me what I was listening to, I would have said, what song is this? I've never heard it. With the way the vocals are presented and the times that they're put in, and even like the melodies, you don't get Pete's low droning bass tone, but the synths kind of mimic that, and it's just like, dude, ugh, wow.
And even the drum sound kind of works with this in here, because production-wise, this is a lot different than the last one. The last one felt a lot more, I would just say, like, straightforward, like just a bigger, more natural, kind of organic sound. Like, yes, their sound is huge and layered, but they did it in a way where it sounds like that's exactly what you're going to get live. Here, I would say that this is like a touch overproduced. Like even the vocals, I detected like either like some chorus effects or some auto tuning, especially in like the more isolated sections, like the title track. And the drums in here are kind of night and day from Moonflowers. Like that one sounded like way more organic. This one, they kind of have that like hyper compressed sound, and to a degree, they almost kind of sound like they're entirely electronic.
Well, they 100% are, at least on 2 songs. Velvet Chains and Tonight Pain Believes. While they may not be 100% electronic throughout most of the song, there are portions in both of those songs where they are electronic. Like in Velvet Chains, when they get into the actual first verse, there's no way you can get that sound out of real drums. That's 100% electronic. I like it. It's got a big, fat, dry tone to it. In fact, both Velvet Chains and Tonight Pain Believes are probably the most mellow songs on the record. I really like those songs, but for totally different reasons than them being a Swallow the Sun song. Like, these sound more shoegazy almost. Like Tonight Pain Believes, you could have told me it was Depeche Mode or the Deftones. They're really relaxed. They're ultra chill. I really like them. They're great night driving songs.
I mean, this band has used electronic drums before, but like the overall drum sound in here, I don't know, it feels too polished, too pristine. It kind of takes away from, again, like the sort of like doomy, like rainy sort of vibe on here. Like this whole album, again, feels very bright. And I feel like it had to be like the intention on here. Like it definitely has its darker spots. Like maybe this is the one where they're like, hey, we're done being depressed for a little bit. We've kind of done that for over 20 years.
Right.
Maybe this is where they kind of like, you know, at least turn the page a little bit in terms of like their sound. Maybe this is a conceptual album. But for me, like while I think it is well executed, it is sometimes a little too far removed from their overall sound. Like Tonight Pain Believes, I like the song. Like I think the verses being more subdued and more haunting are nice, and those, you know, very crooned vocals are cool. But the sharp transition into the big rocking chorus, it doesn't quite gel for me. Like there's a lot of sharp transitions into like very different modes of the song, but that one just felt a little bit jarring. Velvet Chains I actually really liked, and this is like a song that I think would pop up on like, you know, earlier albums as like kind of a break from all the doomy oppressiveness. Like it's a little bit more just kind of clean and soft. There's a really good duet with some female vocals in here. It sounds absolutely awesome. But a song like that usually is like almost a break from, again, like the just absolute fucking 10 tons of sadness that they drop on you with like almost every track.
Right. It's kind of like Coil on the beginning of Watershed. Like really somber and pretty, and you're like, all right, and then the rest of that album just beats your face in. Like, it's kind of like that, except it was in the middle of the record, and it didn't really beat my face in up until that point either.
And that might be, like, one of the reasons why this didn't gel with me as much, is it doesn't have that other side of them to play off of as much as other albums. Like, you know, the melodic breaks on the earlier albums, the ones that definitely exude this band's style, you know, there's that contrast. And there's not as much contrast. Like everything on here feels, again, like a little bit more bright and more centered around a big hook. Like you can feel the chorus coming.
Yeah.
Hell, they even lead into some of these choruses with a pre-chorus or like an acoustic version of the chorus before the big part of the chorus hits. Or sometimes they just flat out mess with you. The title track, while I think has like some of the best instrumentation on the album, like I think it's a really well-written track.
I love that track.
It's beautifully written. It goes back to that kind of like slow, clean, more subdued sound. Like you get, again, those like more light, breathy, crooned vocals. And it drops out. There's an acoustic refrain that kind of builds into the chorus. And then you get these giant soaring melodic hooks. Like they are big. And in this moment, they choose to growl over the chorus. Whereas like every other song in here, when that moment comes up, it is a big, clean chorus hook. And it's weird because I got used to that. Like I was expecting that, and then they did this, and now it just feels weird. It feels like the album was just kind of messing with me at that point. It's odd. I mean, there's like other like kind of odd moments in here, like, you know, Tonight Pain Believes, like there is a growl kind of like shoehorned in there, like it's buried in the mix, and it's intended to harmonize the vocals. Like, well, that's odd, but not as odd is this? Like, that is almost like a reverse sort of stance on a lot of the structure on here, and maybe it was done to kind of like mix it up a little bit, but it doesn't make the chorus land as hard. And there's like a cleaner back half of the chorus, but that's where I really started hearing like the more auto-tune to the vocals, or at least like a chorus effect that kind of just made them sound unnatural. And I'm gonna keep comparing this to like previous albums because that's what I have to go by. But at least when they kind of brought in those subdued moments where they kind of isolate down the vocals, or it's just very, quiet, the vocals sounded more natural. I just really didn't like the sound of like the very processed vocals here.
And not to completely shit on that song, because I actually really like that song in spite of the fact that the chorus threw him for a loop, because there are a bunch of other really great riffy moments in there. In fact, during the lead in that song, it's the first time you hear the drums pick up to a double time, double kick thing, which is a nice contrast under the lead. And like, there's a bunch of really groovy, syncopated, like chuggy riffs in that song too that I thought were neat. But like overall, it was just a weird listen. You're not supposed to feel happy during Doom.
I mean, that's just it. I really didn't feel like a lot of Doom on here. Like, I mean, it definitely has like doomier moments.
Yep.
But like most of this listen, I had to kind of remind myself that I was listening to Swallow the Sun. Like, this is quite a bit different, and I could see this one being like kind of divisive with fans. I doubt I'm the only one that feels this way. If I am, I think you're all insane. I'm the same one here.
If you're calling this guy sane, there's an issue. I'm just going to tell you, there's an issue.
Portrait of Sanity.
Trust me.
Right here. Now, I have to say, though, despite all of this complaining, because there's been a fair amount, I still don't dislike this album, really. It does what it does well. And, I mean, I don't necessarily dislike Paradise Lost Host, and I like a lot of modern Catatonia, and these kind of fit in with those. But, again, it's not exactly what I ordered. But at the same time, I'm going to give this 3 stars, at least, because I think it is well done. The hooks, I think, are great. It would be awesome for a side project that is not Swallow the Sun, but I think they're really well done. My personal favorite tracks in here are definitely the ones that, kind of hark back to their, sound on New Moon and stuff like that. But as far as instrumentation, songwriting, these songs are really well written. They definitely captured, again, a brighter mood. It's not so bright where everything feels super happy. A lot of their material, I feel is kind of brooding in that dark moment.
Yeah.
This is kind of maybe, finding your way out of the fog and the sun's kind of trickling through a little bit. It's kind of that vibe. And by the time you hit the chorus, the sun is full on shining in your face because this band forgot to swallow it. This could probably come off a little bit divisive with fans. And I don't know if this is the band's blueprint for going forward with their sound. I think they've made some absolutely amazing albums very recently. This is kind of a notable shift here. But, I mean, who knows? It isn't as though they're doing it bad. I think, vocally they have the talent to really kind of land these hooks. And again, this band knows how to write just lush, huge melodies. If you're a big fan of, I would say, Typo Negative, Paradise Lost to an extent, and even some Opeth, check this out. Even though it is totally not what I expected, at all.
I'm also going to go ahead and give this record 3 stars as a Swallow the Sun album. If this were a different band under a different moniker, I would give it 3.5 because it's really well executed. But as a Swallow the Sun record, I'm going to give it 3. It's not what I expected it to be either. I expected something just, again, dark and cold and depressive because that's what this band is until today with this record. Big, lavish, lush, layered production, absolutely beautiful melodies through and through. You can't get past the fact that this sounds like Catatonia. I wish I could, but throughout this entire listen, I said, boy, this sounds like Catatonia. Which isn't a bad thing. In the quieter moments of this record, dude, the drum and bass play are amazing. They really know how to slow it down and kind of just allow you to relax a little bit. It's ultra calm and ultra chill at times. When this record is heavy, it's definitely still heavy. They definitely got it. Miko's vocals are incredible. Both his cleans and his growls are very well done, very well presented. Like, you can't help but sing along to a majority of this record, too, because they got those big choruses. I don't want to say Seven Dust, but, you know, like Seven Dust and their big choruses, this kind of has that same vibe. Like, they work up to this giant, huge production of a sound, and it's mesmerizing at times. It is far brighter than I thought it would be. Again, not overly bright, but there were a couple times where I thought about, you know, it was like being in a Disney movie and all the animals are playing in the field and there's sun and you're like, what the hell? But that's not the Disney I know. The Disney I know killed Bambi's mom, and that's where this record should be sitting, and it does sit there a couple times. The whole record has kind of an odd flow. The fact that it took a long time to get going, and then it was super heavy for a minute, and then it digressed back into just being quiet and calm. It was kind of weird. Again, not at all what I was expecting, but they didn't completely shit the bed either. Like, it's still really good. It's just different. Kind of like it was for a lot of bands that have changed their sound over the years. Catatonia, Paradise Lost, just to name a few. Yeah, if you like bands like, of course, Paradise Lost in moments, definitely Catatonia, definitely Opeth, definitely Typo Negative, give this record a spin. It's going to be different than what you're used to, but it's still not bad, so check it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We now offer memberships. They are only 99 cents. There's a join button down below. The only perk we are offering so far is a members-only live stream, which we'll probably do sometime in November because October is absolutely swamped with releases. But we also offer a Booger Troll. Again, do with that information what you will. That's just one of the dumb things that we offer, among other dumb things.
And I assure you, we will get dumber over time.
That's a promise.
Yes.
And that's a word we can barely spell. This is our new way to support the channel. We feel like it's a little bit more direct than Patreon, which eventually we're going to get away from. And this is also to help pretty much pay for StreamYard, because StreamYard is raising their prices. Granted, again, quality is supposed to be going up, blah, 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 all that stuff. But still, it will cost more. We also still have our store too, thrallsmetal.com. We still have our t-shirts and our hats. If you were interested in any of those, there's a link down below. But yeah, if you would like to help us out in any way, we would greatly appreciate it.
And you know what the fun thing is? It's not like you guys don't already help us out. We do everything we do here at Thralls of Metal: album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, Nick's never-ending collection updates, and a whole slew of other things. We do all this for you guys because we appreciate you. We are very thankful that you've chosen to make Thralls of Metal a part of your lives, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I know us, but, you know, whatever. We appreciate it. Thank you to all of our family, our friends, our subscribers, everybody that has helped us make this channel into something monumentally larger than either of us ever thought it would be. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely amazing. Tons of content coming in the future. So one more big thank you because of how amazing you guys are, and it's a lot. And we will catch you later.